We're back again with another show, and here is our guest, Avy. Okay, Avy, how do I pronounce your last name? I've been saying Jeter. Is that right?
It's actually Jeter, mostly on the East Coast, but in California we say Jetter. Jetter.
Jetter. Yes, I wondered
So
that. So, well,
so
I'm
so
sort of in my head. I've been saying Jeter, but then I realized
so
I've never actually heard
either
it.
one. I'll answer to either one.
All right. Okay. Okay. Looks like Chris is just joining us here.
Yeah.
Bring him on.
Up.
So yes, this is Chris, my co-host. Chris and I, we used to work together, and yes, if you run out of anything to say, or you suddenly have to deal with a work message, then him and I can just chat forever about nothing very important.
We'll
Hi,
do our
Chris.
calisthenics. Hey, do you pronounce your Avy? Is that
Yep,
right?
long Avy. Yes.
Okay.
Avy
Cool.
Jetter for West Coast, and here's
Yeah.
Dale. He's
I'll be
our
right
comics
back.
aficionado and art supply expert. So he'll probably want to ask you lots of process questions.
Oh,
about
cool.
Also like
how
zombie movies.
Oh,
make-
nice. I like any kind of horror movies, even the nasty B movies that are kind of tongue in cheek. They know they're in on the joke, super campy. I love those too.
One of your interviews says you're a George Romero fan and that you see the underlying message of criticism of consumerism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consumerism, and I think at the time he really wasn't. He didn't talk about race politics, but Night of the Living Dead. It sort of afterwards was critiqued, right, as a societal message about race relations at that time, because I think it was done in 1968, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So yeah, having the black guy die at the end after he was the hero throughout the whole movie sort of does send a message. I don't know if it was intentional, but
The sci-fi author Stephen Barnes, he talks about that in movies. When he watches a movie, he looks to see if they sacrifice the black characters, and that is something that he sees in films. If you're unfamiliar with his work, he's on Facebook. He's an interesting guy to talk to.
I mean, the running joke in the black community is the black person we're the first to die, and then we never survive the horror movies. So, I mean, that's a long-standing running joke.
Well,
I'm black. I'm gonna die in this movie. So,
well, what about didn't in the last Night of the Living Dead, I think it was Day of the Dead, didn't the black hero survive in the helicopter?
Day of the Dead, it's sort of insinuated that he did. That's the George Romero version.
Yeah.
And then Ving Rhames in the remake,
Dawn
they
of the
all
Dead.
Dawn of the Dead, they all sort of kind of ran off the island, so you don't know who lives, but at least he made it to the boat. He made it to the island, which is huge. I think Ving Rhames has actually been in
baby steps.
he's made it to the end of a lot of zombie movies, because Zombie Apocalypse, that one that was set in LA, I think he made it. I think you didn't miss anything. He made it to the end. It's really so bad that it's good. But I've watched it 100 times. But I think he makes it to the end of that movie too. I'm trying to think of what other zombie movie where.
Well, do you remember? Did you ever see Return of the Living Dead?
Which one? The first one?
The punk rock
80s.
one, yeah.
Yeah, the 80s.
Yeah.
Kind of comedy one from the 80s.
Yeah,
they nuke everyone. Everyone dies.
Right, that's the one. Is that with Miguel Nunez?
No, this is the one in the 80s with there were no real names in it. It was by the guy.
That's the actor's name, because he had like greasy curly hair, and he had like on a denim punk rock thing with
yeah. That's him.
Yeah.
I just don't know the name.
Yeah, I think that's Miguel Nunez.
And God, what's the name of the actor who was in The Thing with Kurt Russell?
Oh yeah. He's a known guy.
Is it TC Carter?
No, I'm trying to remember his name. But he makes it to the end. But they imply they both die.
It's Keith David. Keith David.
Keith David, he's awesome.
Keith David. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was in They Live.
Oh
yeah.
Opposite, he was like Rowdy Piper's friend,
Yeah,
right? They have that
Yep.
big
scene.
Yeah, they beat the crap out of each other near the dumpster.
Have you listened to his voice work in Rick and Morty as the president?
Oh, that's him.
I didn't know that was him. No, I didn't know that was him.
Hilarious.
I love those.
Oh,
That's my
funny.
favorite episode, the one where the president shrinks himself. That's like one of my favorite Rick and Mortys.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now. That's hilarious.
No, it just.
Now, if anyone's wondering why we're going straight into the talk about zombies at the beginning, that's because your story is about zombies, isn't it, Avy? Yes. So nothing good happens at 4 a.m. Is that the title? Yes. So was it? Do you just generally have a love of zombie horror? That's why you did it, or was there some sort of deeper motivation to it?
It totally was, because I was like, first of all, I'll back up. I wanted to do San Francisco Zine Fest back in 2012, and I applied, but I didn't have a comic book or a zine. So at the last minute, I was like, what can I write that I'm super familiar with, that I really love, and I can bang out? And this is my stupidity. I can bang this out in 4 months. So I was like, oh, I love zombies. I can do zombies. And then I was like, well, what's the catch? And I was like, oh, it's going to be black people. Everybody's going to be black. So, we're all going to make it to the end. So that was my motivation. That was my motivation for that.
And you said it in Oakland. I see you've got your Oakland backdrop. And I'm not sure what that building's called, but that appears in your comic, doesn't it?
Right. That's the federal courthouse.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's the federal courthouse. All right. I should know that. All right. Okay. Yes.
Well,
all right. Yes, that's great. And then you've done quite a few issues now, right?
Yeah, I'm working on issue number 7. The pandemic kind of slowed me down. I was doing one a year because I learned my lesson. I almost killed myself trying to do a comic in 4 months. I did get it done, though. I got it done.
Bravo.
But every year after that, I just took a whole year because I work a 9 to 5. So I did one zombie comic book a year. And but in 2020, I was like, oh man, this is not a good year. And it's just everything, the pandemic, other health issues. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to burn myself out trying to get this done. So I'm still working on it. I'm on number 7, and I've been working on it for a couple years during the pandemic, but I think it should be a good one.
Now, I remember looking in an interview with you that sometimes you don't use dialogue in these, and you're treating the pages as whole works of art versus panel by panel stories.
Right.
Now, is this one that you're working on have any dialogue at all?
Yeah, it's more dialogue driven. I mean, that's what I said. That's the caveat of getting a comic book done in 4 months. I was halfway through the first issue, and I was like, you know what? I probably should write a plot. I should probably write some dialogue. So it was minimal, but it was there. It was mostly all conversational. And so that theme sort of continued, where you are not first person and not quite third person viewer, but you're just immediately immersed in their world, and they don't know what's going on, so you don't know what's going on. So you just sort of enter the comic book with them text messaging each other. And so I've kind of used that same technique throughout the comic book. Like, you're sort of viewing them almost as if you're omnipresent, but not quite omnipresent, because you don't know what's going on. You're not all knowing, but I don't know if there's a term for that, but it's definitely minimal, and that is intentional, to answer your question.
A passive reader? I don't even know what to call it.
Right.
Did you find that your experiences during the pandemic, like the shutdown, influenced how you thought people might react to a zombie apocalypse? Because I can tell you, after watching zombie movies for years and being in the shutdown, I'm like, I've been training for this my whole life.
I actually didn't think about how the pandemic would affect the zombie comic books, I did take it as an opportunity to write other things because, like I said, I had health issues. So I started writing about I have respiratory issues, and I started writing about that, and I started writing about just sort of how to navigate being hospitalized because I was tested right at the beginning of the shutdown or lockdown, and at that time you couldn't get your test results back right away. And unbeknownst to me, when I went in the ER, my doctor sent me to the ER because I had a blood oxygen of 85. And if you know anything about that, that means I shouldn't have been walking around. Like I should have been collapsed. So I went to the ER and they gave me a test. But at the time, they have to quarantine you. So I was in the hospital for 6 days until they got the test results back. So I wrote about that. I made a comic book all about that. And then yeah, just like being tested for sleep apnea, which is a whole sleep test or a whole another thing. So I made a sort of a funny mini zine about being tested while you're sleeping, and actually, I won't give it away, but it's a unique experience. So I actually started writing about what was happening to me in the pandemic rather than changing or thinking about how it would affect the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, more like real life. Yeah, and then that's led you to having some of your work in the New Yorker. Is that right? Yes.
Right.
You're in the New Yorker?
Yeah. One of the editors asked me to submit some pieces, and I also have a zine about racial bias and discrimination and how to navigate that and just sort of the everyday microaggressions that happen. So I did I think it was 4 or 6 panel comic about microaggressions. The daily microaggressions is what it's called. And yeah, they put it in the online New Yorker.
Wow.
Yes, no, it was great. Wait, I've
Can
got
I-
one of them here that I liked that's relevant
I'm not
today.
worthy.
Dale's an art supply expert, so he might recognize this scene.
I was just looking at this.
Wait,
I wanted to put an idea out there for a zombie comic during the pandemic, where there are zombies and they're constantly around, but they're not the way we typically think about zombies. They're actually like hiding underground, and when the pandemic starts, they all come up during the night and like live regular lives and don't bite anyone's brain. So
that's cool.
That's my pitch. It's like they're decent people, but they've just been hiding, and when the pandemic starts and everyone goes inside, they can live kind of a normal life.
That's awesome. That's reminds me of the end scene of Shaun of the Dead, where he just has his friend in the basement, and he's a zombie, but he's normal. He's playing video games.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I like that movie. Yeah.
Did you ever see Fido?
Yes.
I love that.
That movie actually really creeped me out quite a bit. That because I do think now that one has a bunch of like social commentary. It's almost too much to unpack in that movie.
Yeah, it's one of the few zombie movies. Well, there have been some since, but at the time, it was like the main character is a zombie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see
Look
that
at
one.
how much
Actually.
help you're
Sarah Jane
getting.
Connolly, isn't it?
Yeah, he's off. It's a completely out of character role for him, but he's just epic in it. Was that picture of you hunting for art supplies?
Yeah.
Is that Dick Blick?
No, I will say it's not Dick Blick. I was gonna say I don't really want to say which chain it was,
Okay.
but it's definitely a chain store that was like maybe 2-3 blocks from my job, and I would go there literally, I don't know, twice
Every
a month,
day.
3 times a month, and
Okay.
even more so, like you said, almost every day. And there was one particular girl that at the register that would leave her register and just follow me no matter what I was buying, no matter what aisle I was in. I just turn around and she's there.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, like, you really think I'm gonna steal this 22 by 40 piece of paper? Like, I'm in the paper section. How can I steal this?
I'd be like, yes, I am. This shit's really expensive.
Right?
Art supplies are expensive.
They are, but I'm like, I can't fit this in my pocket. I can't shove this under my shirt. Like, what are you doing?
Wrong size.
I grew up in the Bay Area, so I've seen all the art supply stores come and go, and
oh, okay.
you know, if you're how long have you been in the Bay Area?
Oh gosh, we moved here when I was a kid, so since the 70s.
Oh, so do you remember like the stores in Berkeley, like Amsterdam Art?
100%, totally,
Oh,
yeah.
that place was epic.
It was awesome.
And Flax in San Francisco.
Right, when it was on
Market?
Market Street. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Market.
When it was,
Oh,
yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
going
we used to go to
Mecca.
that for my child, and it's been gone for years now.
Yeah, it's too bad. I've gone to the Oakland one. It's really nice, and I recommend it. But you
It's
know,
not the same.
you miss the ones you grew up with.
Right, it's not the same.
Yeah, I don't even know if they have Utrecht anymore because Blick bought it.
Well, that's a good question. I thought it was online still,
Okay.
but I haven't bought art supplies online in a long time, just because I like to touch.
Oh, I
You
know
know,
what you mean.
yeah, touch the paper, touch
Yeah.
the pens and stuff.
But you're analog. I mean, I saw a video of you doing one of your wonderful portraits. You were using what looked like just an office ballpoint pen. What tools
Right.
do you use?
I do. That's my favorite pen. It's a Uniball. I think it's a Uniball Vision Fine Point steel tip pen. That's my main weapon. And I do paint and use watercolors, some gouache. In fact, the third issue of my comic book, it was all hand colored with watercolors. That was the only issue I did full color, and it was analog. Just simply because I always rebelled against learning how to color digitally in art school, and just never followed up, never learned. I'm teaching myself now how to color digitally, and it's so hard. It's such a big learning curve.
Okay.
But
Do you want
yeah,
do you want your coloring to still look like watercolors, or are you going to go just the flat fill with the gradation route?
no, I really don't like that look. I would probably just mimic watercolors or acrylic paintings. Um, yeah, that's one thing that held me back. I just don't like the look of digital work. It's too slick. It's too processed. You know.
You ever look at like the BoJack Horseman stuff, where I'm sure they do their like fills but they do these fills that are basically like, it almost looks like they took watercolor, like the complexity of like an analog fill, and put it on their characters. So instead of it
Okay.
just being like one, it's hard to. But if you look at the BoJack Horseman stuff, you can see it, like, like the horse's head is brown, but it's not like just a solid color. It just gives it a little
I see
extra.
it. It
Right.
looks like a texture overlay in one of the layers.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, I'm
I
talking
dig
Photoshop.
that. I know what you're saying about like these flat colors where you just fill spaces with flat colors. It's not as interesting to me
But
anyway.
if you like me to share my screen,
Yeah.
Chuck, I have a few of my
Yeah, great. Yes.
my pieces.
Yeah, show work. Avy, are you thinking about switching to digital then, or putting digital in your pipeline?
Only where it is absolutely necessary, just sort of for time constraints. Let me figure out how to share my screen.
Yeah, I was going to ask
you-
you that question. That are you going to digital just because it's you can do more? It's more of like a work, like efficiency type of thing.
Yeah, that would be the only reason.
Because
Maybe there should be a little button, a little square like screen with a little arrow in it, and then it'll bring it up at the side, and that's it. Now I can bring it up here. There we go.
There we go. So yeah, let me. So you're seeing the green slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll sort of click through. So these are
Yeah.
some of my markers. I'm using Copic markers.
Okay.
Yeah, so Copic are a good way to go. I mean, they're nice and quick, aren't they? And not too messy. So they're kind of like, and then they give you that organic feel, like digital. So I mean, I don't know, compared to the cost of running a computer, they're probably not that bad, but they're kind of expensive, aren't they?
A little bit. I think I've kind of if you look at my YouTube channel, I've sort of tested other brands that are a little less expensive, like Ohuhu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Ohuhu, and I think is gosh, I'm blanking on. There's like a really cheap art blender, or what it's called, Comic Arts. I'm not sure. If you check my YouTube channel, I have several reviews of all the different markers. But I've actually tested other markers other than Copic, just sort of looking for cheaper alternatives. Um, so, and then I'll do mixed media. So there's watercolor,
Mm.
mixed in within it. And sort of just not always quite fine art, but I mix in comics with the images as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
and you're like quite crazy with your color choices, which is great. Yeah, I guess very,
Now,
very
these are
visceral.
these aren't caricatures, and you obviously know your anatomy in portraiture, but you're really showing your style here. You're letting your style come through. And I watched a video interview with you. Is there a name for this? I mean, is this what you were describing as lowbrow art, or how do you describe your work?
This is like really some of my most recent stuff that I started doing in Shelter in Place in 2020, and I really haven't, come up with a name for it. I would mostly consider my comics, my indie comics, more lowbrow because they're all color, they're copied on Xerox, machines,
Okay.
and they're not perfect bound graphic novels or anything like that. They're all just regular Xerox paper for the most part, and like limited color. Like I said, only one issue is in color. So that I was thinking more of, or just the standalone comics that I make with pen and ink, are more I
Okay.
would consider lowbrow ish comics, indie comics.
But that's
Uh,
because of how it's reproduced.
Reproduced, and some of the subject matter isn't PC. It's sort of raunchy, and you can get away with a little bit more
Mhm.
in indie comics because there is a little bit of a language thing where I do tell parents, and if a kid comes to my table and is under 13 or 14, so you got to probably talk to your parents because there's cuss words in there, maybe some themed violence that they may or may not like. So that also kind of plays a part into it because I definitely use a lot of curse words.
Is that in the comic or just while you're drawing them?
Both. That's in the comic. Actually, going back to 2012, man, I was laughing as I was killing people in my comic book for the first time. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cathartic." I'm like murdering people on paper, and it's awesome.
So
It's just,
so it's therapy.
oh my god, yes. Because I've put people in real life in my comics, and they don't know they're in there, and I think that's awesome. Maybe one day they'll find it, they'll find themselves in it, but I'm just snickering to myself. I'm
Well,
murdering you.
I'm looking at these two pages right now, and this reminds me not so much of people's comic work, but I've seen murals that
Mm,
remind me of this style. Who were your influences that took you to this style? Were there people that you admire who work like this, or?
Definitely, I'm super influenced by murals and street art. I used to do graffiti as a teenager,
Oh
so
wow.
I'm definitely influenced by that. And my brother is an artist. He doesn't really draw and paint anymore, but he did murals when he was a teenager, and I was, a little bit younger, and so I've always been influenced by that.
So it's spray can murals.
My brother did acrylic. He was analog as well. He did
Oh,
acrylic.
so direct paint on the wall, not using spray
Right.
cans or a spray gun. Okay.
Right. And so I'm a little younger, so I was the next generation. So I got into spray can art and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Mm.
So yeah, because I'm looking at that and I'm thinking of the color choices that you're using. It reminds me a lot of mural art.
Definitely super influenced. Definitely is bold, bright, contrast, get your attention in your face. And not only just contrast color, but like the themes, like contrasting colors with very heavy themes, like, you know what I mean? Super bright colors, but I'm maybe talking about something super serious or depressing, just that interplay. I really like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump on
And you,
topics.
yeah. you still use text a lot, and you're still using text a lot. It's kind of interesting coming out of comics. But yeah, and you've done, like in the past, you've done, kind of slogans like Black Lives Matter and different slogans that you've done with just sort of colored text, which I always find very interesting as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely want to start a conversation instead of. I hate to sort of preach to people, but I definitely want to start a conversation, maybe stir up emotion, even in the comics or in my standalone, illustrations. Like I want people to think and question and try to figure out not what I'm doing or not necessarily how I'm doing, but what am I trying to say and how do they feel about, what they're seeing,
It's super cool. I kept on, I was like trying to find your website to see these things in high res because I'm getting them through the stream and I'm like, they look super cool, but they've got some compression on them. I'm like, then I realized you're going through your Google. This is like your personal stash.
Yeah. I think Behance is the most updated work.
But yeah, that's where I am right now, I think.
Yeah. But
yeah.
It's a constant struggle to update. Instagram is pretty much up to date. Instagram and not so much Facebook, but Instagram has sort of become the catch-all for everything.
Avy, now you studied art. You went to college for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, did you do the traditional route, like life drawing and color classes and perspective and all that stuff?
Correct.
Because, do you still do any life draw? I know because of the pandemic, I had to stop. But were you someone where life drawing was a hobby, or you prefer to work from photos, or?
I tried to continue, like you said, because of the pandemic. It was almost impossible.
Yeah.
But I did sort of host a virtual live drawing on my Oakland Creates YouTube channel because I organized a local mini zine fest called Oakland Creates, and so I did that, but it was all virtual.
Okay.
But I definitely I draw from real references when I can. Sometimes if it's something that I don't have somebody to stand in or I can't get the right angle on myself, because sometimes I'll photograph myself and draw myself in different poses, or I'll have a friend pose. Sometimes you do have to search. There's stock photos that you can use for people in different positions. I think DeviantArt is really good about that. You can find models doing different poses on DeviantArt. But yeah, I prefer to draw from life, but it's not always convenient.
But you love the figure, it looks like.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
Okay. I dig. I was getting back into it before the pandemic. I love drawing from a live model.
Yeah, it's a skill that you have to keep up with. I do too. But it's just like any other muscle. You have to exercise it. I mean, it comes back if you have muscle memory. It comes right back, but you definitely have to get back into the groove of it. But it's a whole different experience. I'm sure of just like the whole atmosphere and just the part of your brain that you use to do it.
Yeah. The flow
state.
State.
It kicks in. It's a little more, a little more adrenaline when you're sort of there in front of the model, and you kind of got to do it there and get on with it. Yeah, I hadn't done it for years and years, and then I got into they had the Doctor Sketchies in San Francisco that was being run. A few other cartoonists were going to that with sort of clothes models, but usually sort of like dressed as superheroes or whatever. But yeah, it was very fun, and it really sort of woke that up in me again because after drawing comics and just sort of I'd use photo reference or whatever, but really just sort of using my imagination and then actually sort of sitting in front of the model. It really it's been good. So yeah. Definitely worth something you have to do. I hadn't done it. I didn't go to art school really. I mean here and there I took classes, but like early on, I've just always been quite sort of self-taught. So yeah, it was quite a different thing for me. I mean, it's been a long time since I sat in front of a model.
Yeah, art school. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you probably what you're going to answer right now, but I was going to say like, what did you like take out of art school that you're like? Like I went to school for media arts, and there's like a few things that I thought were worth learning, and the rest of it was just like cost of tuition and a lot of bullshit, in my opinion. What did you take out of art school that you were like, this was really valuable stuff?
And it's odd that, yeah, I was just gonna answer that because I didn't really put the pieces together till maybe 15 years after graduating art school. Then, oh, this is what they meant. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I get it now. Because you're just doing the lessons, right? You're just doing the tasks that they give you, kind of mindlessly almost, and you don't put that much thought into it until you actually have to use it in your own work to solve problems or come up with solutions, right? And so I think the biggest thing that I took away, that was valuable to me at least, was to sort of use art as a language. And it became very important in comics, which is something I'm still learning, is to be able to communicate like I said, I don't think you say non-verbally if it's written, but without words. So you should be able to tell a story without words, even if it's an abstract painting, right? And even if it's a fine art painting, it's telling a story. It's telling a story that is something that you may or may not intend, but there's also underlying story that you might not even pick up on that speaks to who you are as a person. And a lot of times you'll get feedback from other people and like, oh, okay, maybe, that is part of what I was talking about, but that I didn't intentionally add that, right? So your art sort of should tell a story, and oftentimes it tells a story both about the subject matter, but also about yourself as a person. And that clicked for me, after art school, is that, oh, okay, you can intentionally tell a story without words or without explanation of just by the colors you use or the movement or the line thickness or the weight of your lines or just the composition that you choose. You can definitely tell a story, and that didn't make sense to me until much later out of art school.
Yeah,
I think
so
there's
it's like a
one thing that
language.
comes through, like no matter how like technically, good you are at art, but I think like, the emotion like comes through in the most basic sort of kids drawing, whatever, you can sort of get the emotion on the paper,
Right.
but then beyond that, it's like how much can you sort of develop, that emotion into some sort of a story or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Avy, are there any cartoonists that you look at or admire who do tell stories wordlessly? I ask this because both Chuck and I are big fans of Sergio Aragonés from Mad, who's done a lot of nonverbal stuff for Mad Magazine. Who are you influenced by? Or
I knew you were going to ask this question, and I didn't look up his name.
there's always a test.
He taught at CCAC. It was CCAC when I went there, arts and crafts. Now it's just CCA. Oh my God, he teaches there, and I cannot remember his name. I feel so bad. But he does abstract comics, and so
Okay.
he doesn't use words at all, and even less than I do, and even he doesn't use characters or images that are representational.
Okay.
So,
So it's
and
all
then
just abstract panels, and you pick up the emotional state from the colors and the line.
right, I'll try to
Um,
get it to Chuck so you can put it in the description who I'm talking about. I'll look it up because
I'm like,
I'm blanking on who he is. Oh my gosh.
as you guys
And
are
then
describing this, I'm like, I'm pulling up a blank. I'm like, what does that look like? I have no idea what that looks like.
Well,
We'll,
there
we'll,
was
we'll find him.
Chris is more on the music side. Yeah, we always having to explain things like Star Wars to him.
Well, when you say that, like, there's no characters and there's no conversation and there's like you're stripping away all the stuff that, like, for me would tell a story, and I'm like, okay, what does that look like?
Well, I think it was like old Warner Brothers and old Disney cartoons, like in the 50s, they would experiment with like jazz soundtracks and then just like a moving line or a bouncing dot or
Oh, like
Right.
a
Fantasia.
square falling in love with a triangle.
right, even more abstract than Fantasia.
Hmm.
Because there were characters of the hippo or whatever in the circus, but gosh,
Mickey.
I'm still thinking about trying to figure out what his name is.
Who's
But
got the
as
book?
But if you, as you talk to me, I'll try to Google it.
But I can Google it, and you guys can keep on talking. What should I Google?
Are there any cartoonists you admire now?
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah.
Besides
oh my
Chuck.
God. Ben Passmore. I'm a huge Ben Passmore fan.
Oh, from the Nib.
Yeah.
Yeah, his color choices are really good. They're bright and just not very happy subjects.
Yeah, exactly. Just up my alley. I love it.
I'm looking at his stuff right now.
Yeah, there is
I
that
love his
contrast
work.
in your work. Yeah, your colors are very sort of bright and happy. And then this one's a good example of that. And then you're having your horrible allergy problem.
Have you ever thought about perhaps submitting to the Nib or reaching out to them?
I have. I really have. I'm just, like I said, this pandemic, and I'm so
No, I get
busy. But definitely,
Okay.
it was awesome to do it in New York. Gosh, I wish I had more free time. But it is what I do. I use the most of my off, sort of quote unquote free time, because I work on art when I get off of my 9 to 5. But
Do you think that it would be easier if you switched to digital versus analog?
easier, yes, maybe, but I would not enjoy it. I would not
Okay.
like what
Yeah.
I was producing. Not only because I don't like the look of it, because I'm such a baby. I'm such a newbie. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So, you what's the saying where you shouldn't like your work because your expectation of what it should look like doesn't match the outcome or product,
Yeah.
right? So that would be the case. That would be the case with digital. I'm like, oh, this is so ugly. This is so gross. And
But
it's because
yes,
I'm brand new.
But sometimes
Well,
those are the ones that other people like the most. The ones that where I'm sort of like, oh, I'm really struggling to achieve this like goal, and I feel like I didn't make my goal. But then other people see it and go, oh, I really like that one, because they can see that you worked at, that you can see that they're working it. So it's very hard to judge your own work like that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one thing I did learn in art school too, Chuck, is that if you don't like it, don't show it, because inevitably someone's gonna pick that one, and you're gonna be so upset. You're gonna be so upset.
Pigeonholed, like you'll be pigeonholed forever. Do more like that.
We're not even pigeonholed. If you hate it and you think it's garbage, and someone picks it, you're just stuck. Like, you can't tell them that you think it's horrible, right? So
you mean like a client picks it?
Yeah, or a client, or just the audience that looks at your work, in the show or online, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to talk about this one, but they love it and I hate it. You know what I mean?
It'd be like my estimation of you just went way down, audience.
The audience, yes, yeah. But that's like, we know that from advertising, Chris. Chris and I, we met in an advertising agency. I mean, I used to find like, you put in an idea that you don't like, that's the one they like.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Avy, if it's because you're a noob digitally, Chuck knows what he's doing because he's a Photoshop junkie, and I pretend to know what I'm doing. So if you ever have any questions, you can always reach us through Facebook, and I'll tell you something, and then you can ask Chuck if it's true.
I'll definitely hit you up now that I know you're a Photoshop junkie, because I literally go to Google and do the step-by-step how to do things.
That's how you learn. For me, I just I just got onto doing it digitally. I don't know, but I prefer to work. I prefer to work more analog. So I'm moving away from digital more. I mean, I don't know. I just used it a lot over the years. But the way to learn it is just to figure it out. I find. I mean, if you don't know, I teach myself. I go look it up and figure it out.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll read a book or something.
Photoshop is such a big.
You've got to enjoy the process of it. I mean, that's And so digital, it's sort of. I don't know. We spend enough time on computers anyway.
Right.
And Avy, Photoshop is such a.
Oh, go.
Well, Photoshop is such a big, complicated program. It's not a good stepping stone. Like when I first learned how to do audio, I didn't start off with like the most complicated DAWs out there. No, I mean, I mean, you might not think so, Dale, but I mean, I use Photoshop for like 20 years. Like I use it every day.
So
it's a lot easier in the beginning.
It's not if you're not like a digital, if you're not used to those types of programs and you just step into Photoshop, there's a lot going on. It's
Yeah.
you know.
And they change it on you. They just changed Illustrator, and I'm like, oh wait, where are all the buttons that I'm used to?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
No, well, the thing is, this comes up a lot when we're talking with other artists. Clip Studio Paint is a popular drawing application that some people are choosing over Photoshop and Illustrator. The people who are working on iPads are gravitating to Procreate. Yeah, that's a hot one.
Oh, I couldn't be bothered with it. It's like, oh, I do not want to spend any more time faffing about on my iPad.
But go on. Sorry.
No, I think it's interesting too because I have an iPad, and I had it for a couple of years, and everyone's talking about Procreate, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to, fuss around like you said with iPad. And then I got a PC, a little PC, and Sketchbook is on there, and so I finally started using Sketchbook, which is another design, app. So it's interesting though because it's I guess it's similar, but it was just so much easier for me to figure it out versus Procreate. And I don't know what it is about working on an iPad versus on a PC, but like I said, I'm new, but it definitely it's weird. It's more accessible. It's easier for me to step in.
Okay, no, we can waste the whole day talking about this. Usually, this group we're either talking about.
Avy can only be with us till 10. So yes.
Wow! And we haven't even talked about Zardoz and cannibalism yet.
We should have started there,
Right.
I watched some of your videos, and I understand you're part of the zine community.
Right.
We're in a social media age. As you continue to design zines for the future, are you going to be designing them simply for the traditional way of, photocopies and saddle stitch, or are you going to start moving more into using these on social media? What's the best way of getting your story out there? And does that matter?
It does matter. I think it's pretty much up to the audience who you're the artist who you want your audience to be, I should say. I definitely am still loving doing zines the old traditional way with photocopies and hand folding and saddle stitch. I have looked at different web platforms for the comics, and again, it's just not. I'm maybe older, and I don't want to date myself, but reading things on the computer and using digital platforms is just not that appealing, and it just loses some of the warmth and some of the organic chemistry that you have when you can actually pick up a piece of paper and you can feel the grooves in the ink, and you know what I mean. So
Okay.
you can't do that in a digital platform, even if you print it out, right? So I do love because Xerox has a texture of its own, and different papers when you Xerox. You can use a little fancier paper. You can use super cheap paper. That's a thing too, right? And Rezo printing has a certain look to it. So yeah, I really do enjoy the more traditional forms of zine making.
So you think analog, having someone read your work on paper is important for your storytelling?
Yes, it's definitely important for the storytelling and also to immerse yourself into the story.
Okay.
I think it's so easy to be distracted or not pay full attention when you're looking at the computer, right? You tend to skim more, or sort of, we do have a digital visual language, right?
Okay.
And so some younger people never knew an age without computers, so they developed that very quickly, right? It's a certain language that even on websites or other, just like business websites, where to go, how to read it. Like traditionally you read a paper book, what is it, right to left, is it?
Left to right.
Left to right.
left to right,
Right,
and
yeah.
top down, right? In America.
Yeah.
It's, and so that is a older tradition of how to process information, right?
Right.
Oh yes,
Where
you're talking about my dad here, who, you know, my 90-year-old dad. Like, he looks at a webpage, he has to read every single thing on the screen, and it, you know, he's been like this for 10 years. You know, you can't tell him, you know, you don't need to absorb everything that's there.
But even
Yeah.
just knowing what the words mean, right? They don't mean the same on a digital platform that they do on paper or in a book or in a novel, right? And they have connections on a website that you, unless you're used to that language, you don't make those connections. You know, just an example. You want to find a phone number. If you're older, you're literally looking for a phone number. You don't think to go to contact us, or what is it? You go to contact us, or you go to about, and then
Yeah,
it'll have
about,
information, right? But an older person would be looking physically on the page, that phone number, and it'll say it right there on the front page. Well, obviously you can't, like you said, you can't fit everything on the front page, Chuck. And so older people are really looking for everything to be on that front page, but there's shortcut. That's what the word I'm looking for. There's shortcuts to the language, the electronic language, right? So that they're clues that they might not understand or know. And that is true of traditional paper reading. They're just almost etiquette or rules to reading something that's in your hand, right? And you can also go back to it, and you can reread it and re-experience it, and see and find things that you didn't see the first time. And oftentimes digitally we don't go back and re-watch or reread. Sometimes we do if we're super invested in the comic. But for the most part, a book, you know, you sort of carry it around with you, or you read it multiple times, and you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm
Yes,
making
I
sense.
mean, Alan
Yeah,
Moore
no.
talked
No, I
about it in
understand what
comics.
you
You
mean.
know, the ability of a printed comic. You know, the reader controls the time more than any other medium. You know, even in a book, you know, you're kind of you sort of go through. I mean, you can pop back or whatever, or video you can rewind, but really in a comic, you can be sort of held in a panel. You know, and he uses it a lot in his sort of time travel stories, that you're sort of jumping back and forth and all this, and oh, what happened there, and the panel repeats, and all, you know, and the reader really controls that, so it's different. But I mean, also comics are about this sort of you know, simplifying the visual language in a way. I mean, certainly, I mean, I find that's a big part of it. You know, where I'm like, you know, what's the most simple way that you can convey the information in a way? You know, especially with comics where you've got to do sort of so much of it. Yeah.
And just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. You were describing the the language of being online that kids pick up just because they're kids and they're absorbing all of this. And you were describing this between how a kid would look at something versus a senior like Chuck's dad. I'm curious, did you ever provide any sort of technical support or training or explanation about the web to older people? Because it sounds like you did that before.
Oh yeah, in my 9 to 5, I'm front facing. I deal with the general public, and we have a website, and I'm an advisor. So every day, when I do get older callers, older people need to be walked through in a certain way that, like I said, if you grew up in the 90s with computers every day, no one has to explain to you, because you've sort of like speaking another language. If you grew up in a household that spoke Spanish, you don't have to go to school and learn it, because you're just immersed in it. You just know what it is, right? Same thing. It's a language. So if it's just speaking another language that you're fluent, if you grew up with it from birth to now.
Yeah.
They don't know what a typewriter is. They have no idea what a memo thing. They have no idea. What is it? The where you would do data entry on it. I can't remember what it's called. No, it was just sort of like in between. Before we got computers, you would have it's almost like a typewriter. It's in between a typewriter and computer, where you would just type in data, and that's it. I can't remember what it's called now.
And
but,
then it would print it out for you at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called either, but I remember people using those in college and me thinking, whoa, this is amazing. Like
I had one.
Yeah, I forget what those things are called.
But 10 key?
No, I
like
can't
a data
remember.
processor. Or,
No.
Data processor. That's what it
Yeah.
was.
I was a Mac genius, so you were talking the talk of explanations.
Okay.
We recognize our own.
Yeah, I have.
That was very perceptive of you, Dale. Yes, I was impressed.
Yeah, I have to do it. I have to do it for work, and you know, I'm always surprised when a young person doesn't know how to navigate a website. Maybe that's
yeah,
biased, but
I've got a daughter who's 15, and I swear, I thought those kids were going to run circles around me. I thought her and her friends would run circles around me, and that's not what I'm seeing actually. Like, I'm pretty computer savvy, but I'm not like a genius at this stuff. But sometimes, I know how to navigate stuff better. I know where the options are better. I know how to change stuff
Right.
better. I'm like, what's going on here? What are you
Yeah.
kids doing when you're on the computer all day? Like,
Yeah.
you're not learning how to use them.
The
Well, we sort
problem
of grew
is
up with it bit by bit. Like, we've learned it incrementally as it's gone along. And now
Well,
it's a sort of like complicated
I
thing.
learned computers from the kind of the ground up. Like, so like people like so I'm 51. So I remember when computers first got into schools and learning command line and learning how a computer works and the stuff that you used to have to know. So I've still got
Right.
that. For my child, they just get a computer and you start using it. What's compiling, what's binary, who knows, what's an operating system? I don't know. I sent a picture to my friend.
well,
Yeah, well, let's talk about Avy's portraits here a bit, because we've only got
Yeah.
Avy for a few more minutes here.
Oh,
So look
sorry,
at these
we
portraits.
jabber, D. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I enjoy it.
Yeah, please come back sometime.
Yeah, this
For
is
sure.
great work. I mean, I really dig it, and I don't have the background that these guys do. I just kind of like know what I like, and there's a lot of life to these like portraits. I mean, I'm digging it.
And your hatching to do shading is wonderful.
Thank
These
you.
are ballpoint pen, right?
Yes, and a little bit of gray Copic marker over it just to add a little bit of dimension.
Okay. Yeah, line work like that is hard.
Yeah, it's so funny because I actually started doing ink line work to develop a better touch with graphite pencils. So, yeah, so I think I'm approaching it in a sort of weird way, a backwards way.
Did you
But
ever see Paul Calais' book, The Pencil? I mean, it's decades old, but if your goal was to learn hatching for graphite, that's a really cool book.
what's it called? I have to write it down and look it up. What's it
The
called?
Pencil by Paul Calais, Calle. And
CALL.
LLE.
I'll
But
check it out.
you don't need it, but it might interest you.
I was gonna say that's what fuels me is stuff like that.
Okay.
That's what motivates me and keeps me like what is it, the analogy of a bank account, like you need to put deposits in so that you can keep taking withdrawals, and so that's what kind of art books sort of do that for me.
Yeah, it just obviously you had the hatching classes in school.
No, I didn't learn this in school. Like I said,
really?
I learned more. I went to art school when they were focusing on concept art, and so all of the techniques I did learn. I did ask questions, but in terms of just having, I think Vincent Perez, maybe Richard Gayton, if you know those guys, those were the only ones actually teaching technique, and those were a couple of that made two classes out of 4 years, 5 years. It took me 5 years.
I've heard of Victor Perez.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember him.
Raymond Saunders,
Okay.
So they talk more about how to do it. But yeah, the focus at the time, they shifted from 60s and 70s were more technique to 80s and 90s became about concept. So they weren't teaching how to do stuff, which it's kind of reflective in the work that's produced. I'm not going to say if it's good or bad, but you can.
That's
you can
interesting, because my daughter is a visual artist, and she's had these classes for years now, where all they teach her is boring technique, and she is not a fan. But there's nothing conceptual. there's nothing conceptual going on at all. It's like it's
Wow.
swung completely like the other
Oh
way.
my God.
Wow.
Who's the portrait on the right?
That's Louis Armstrong.
Oh my God, that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
Like-
Jacob Lawrence on the left, one of my favorite artists.
Man, I love faces like that when doing a portrait because there's all these things to explore while you're drawing it.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Right,
So
and
a little
It's just great. Yeah.
Happy accidents too.
Yeah.
And stuff you don't see till you're finished. You're like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and you're doing it in ink, which is gutsy. You know, I do it on the computer because I have an undo button. I'm a big baby.
That's the other thing
Oh, that's-
about working analog. There's an analogy in the audio world, but it's kind of like when you work with analog, both in audio and visually, it's like you have to commit to stuff, and there's no going back. There's no constantly second guessing yourself, and I think there is
Right.
something to that. It's
Yeah.
Chuck
Or like jazz music, right?
yeah.
Chuck does that when he draws his crowd scenes in his children's books because he's doing those characters on the fly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome
somewhat.
stuff.
Yes, I'll figure out where they're going to be. I'll certainly do a certain amount of sort of building it up in pencil, but yeah, in terms of the actual rendering, yeah, you don't really have the time. So yeah, just sort of kind of charge right in there and hope for the best.
And that's what I'm learning. I'm teaching myself now is how to incorporate what I do, fine art, into comics, like just letting it go and not use references and sort of, like you said, maybe put together a thumbnail and composition of where you think things should go and how they should look ultimately, but like in terms of the actual process, just going for it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's always
Maybe,
some use to reference. I mean, even for like a very simple cartoon, you know, like even now, if I'm drawing a sort of, like I was just the other day, I was doing a dog, a horse, and a hamster for an educational project. But I'll always look at a reference just to, you know, because that'll inform the drawing, and I'll do something that I wouldn't have just, you know, yeah, it'll be better.
Avy, I guess from what Chuck said, you have to leave at 10, but I mean, I know that you have an Etsy site where you're selling work.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a Behance site if someone wants to hire you. Where else? I think that you have nothing, NUTHIN, good at the number 4.
For my Instagram. I have the .com. I've been having domain issues. I got to go back, but
Okay.
you always can hit me up on Instagram, and I have a link tree, and so you can go to various places from the link in my bio. And I don't have to leave. I don't have to leave exactly at 10, but I know that
Okay.
I only blocked out a certain amount of time on my work schedule.
Oh, okay. Then we can talk about Zardoz.
Yeah, for sure. I have it blocked off. Because I literally take appointments. So if I wasn't on this is not Zoom, but if I wasn't on this, I'd be doing Zoom calls or whatnot for work. So, you know, I have it blocked out so nobody makes an appointment.
Wow, you know, I'm looking at these portraits, and some of them are almost like Northern European Renaissance portraits.
Definitely influenced by that. Kind of chiaroscuro, light and dark shadow is very much influenced by that. Yes.
Wow.
Avy, where do
That's
you
where
go?
the art.
Like,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna say, where do you go when you? Because you've been doing this for a while, and I've been doing music for a while, and you know, for me, I have to like try to find places to keep things interesting and to get new ideas and stuff like that. What do you do to stay inspired and generate new ideas and keep emotionally fresh?
First of all, I'd love to just look at art on the street. That's like my number one go-to. Because if you go to downtown Oakland now, you'll see all the murals and stuff. I don't know if are you guys local in Oakland Bay Area?
No,
I'm in
San Jose.
I'm in Bernal Heights, San Francisco.
So if you walk down the main 2 strips in Oakland, they're just lined with murals now. After George Floyd, they just put up
Mm.
murals of George Floyd, but then it sort of mutated into just any person like Huey P. Newton or favorite musicians, just anything you can think of, or words of protest or resistance, just all these like flowers and just whatever. There's like a ton of murals all up and down the street, and so there's something new probably every few months. And so yeah, I'll just kind of cruise down um, and check that out. That's a big influence. It kind of refreshes me. And then again, like I said, I'll get art books and sort of flip through. Some of my favorite artists online have either YouTube channels or art books that I'll go to. I'm a huge fan of Minnie Smalls on YouTube. She just totally, I love listening to her voice. I love her work. Awesome YouTube channel. I recently found A.O. Hammer. She's an awesome artist. I love listening to her art vlog. People like that, I'll listen to them on YouTube, watch what they're doing and what they're saying.
Minnie Smalls is how do you Minnie Small?
Yes, she's
From
She's
Southeast
British.
London.
Oh, yeah, Southeast London. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
pulling it up right now.
She's amazing. She really talks about her journey and what she does and why she does it, and you can watch her process videos.
Oh, process videos. Yeah, yeah, that's
Oh.
always interesting process.
I'm a
But she also,
junkie for those.
she lets you into her life though too. She videotapes her studio and her day-to-day work because she does it full time, which is one thing I'd like to do, is do it full time. So just watching her in studio, and A.O. Hammer, she's in studio, and so you can watch her prep for shows and just anything that she does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's interesting what's happening with artists now these days. It used to be that the work was just the finished work, and now the work is becoming more of the whole process around it and letting you into their personal lives. And it
Right.
used to be you'd work on your masterpiece, you'd paint it, and no one would see all the failures and all the process you went through, and they just see the final thing.
So
and now it's
true.
just as interesting to see the story that led up to that.
So true.
Well,
Yeah, Amber was talking last week about was it Bobby Crosby doing his latest comic, and like he was videoing his just like his writing process where he's just sort of sitting
Oh.
there thinking and
oh man,
Like writer's block.
Nice Fox Theater sign.
Thank you. Oh my god, that is so relatable though. Oh my gosh. Either that or taking a nap. Because I'm coming up with a concept while I'm taking a nap. And it sounds hilarious, but I literally will wake up and be like shh on my phone, like, oh, it came to me. But I was sleeping, and you do that, and people are just like, that is why the life of an artist is like, like, oh my god, it's not a real job. But
yeah, it's like it's gonna be like the Truman Show now. You've got to be just on the whole time.
Yeah, that. I mean, Avy, you're probably the youngest one here, but I remember like going to art school. If you wanted to see how somebody worked, you were hoping that in it there would be an art book where they would have maybe like one chapter where they would walk through step by step, or you would get the artist magazine where they would show the stuff step by step, or airbrush action, or step by step graphics.
right.
And now YouTube, you get to watch them do a whole painting. And
Man, that's awesome. I appreciate you saying that so much, but I'm sorry, I forgot your name. You're the musician.
Oh,
No, Dale.
Chris Kibble Badger.
What is it?
It's actually Chris. Sorry, I should
Chris.
have my real name up here instead of Kibble Badger.
No, when you were talking, I was like, oh, I'm a little bit older than you. So thank you for that compliment. I'm a little bit older than Chris.
really,
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Chris is
Black-
living a hard life.
Black don't crack.
You must be doing something right. Yeah, it's the naps.
It's
we're
the naps.
We're all about the same age then. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the naps, dude.
I was gonna say, to the outsider, if you're watching an artist's work and they're napping or whatever, they're sleeping in, it might just look like they're being lazy. But I agree. Like a lot of my ideas for lyrics come to me in the morning.
Yeah.
And there's something about Like when I was like a computer science major for like a year before I figured out that was the wrong thing to do. I had a professor that said when you come up to like when you get stuck coding, his advice was to, if you can't solve it in 10, 15 minutes, walk away from it and come back the next day.
Yeah.
Which seems counterintuitive because I think what we're taught culturally is to sit there, put your nose to the grindstone, and for the next, 2 hours, bat your head up against the wall. And I wish that advice sunk in, because that's a really good artist process, to walk away, take a nap. It'll come to you in the morning,
John Cleese.
Yeah, but also a deadline makes you get it done.
Yeah, that's true. But I do that. I mean, you literally, I posted on Instagram that I'm watching paint dry because I didn't know where to go in my next step. So just let the paint dry and, binge watch Survivor for an hour. And, okay, now I can go back.
No, I think there's some too. I mean, like when you weightlift, people think that like weightlifting is all about lifting weights, and it is, but the recovery time is just as important. If you don't have the recovery, you actually can't grow, and your brain's kind of like that. Like you'll actually fatigue and wear your brain out. Like if you're meeting horrendous deadlines for like a year, Chuck, like if you've got this high stress deadline for a year, like every week you have to meet one. After about a year, you might not be in very good shape. You know?
100%. I agree. And I do have to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Avy, thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome.
That's just been awesome. We loved having you. It's a great conversation. Hopefully, we'll have you back again soon. Well, good luck with everything and being a New Yorker cartoonist and with the portraits. And have you got any shows coming up anywhere where anyone can go and see you?
Yeah, I was humbled to be asked to be the guest of honor for San Francisco Zine Fest this year. So we are at the City View Marriott, downtown San Francisco, on September 4th, Sunday, and I'll be the guest. I'll be the guest of honor. So I'll have a table, God willing, full of new and other stuff that I've shown before, but people seem to like. So I'm bringing it back. So that's the next adventure for me.
Maybe we can have you.
Very good. Well served. Yes, excellent.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, Dale.
Maybe we can have you as a guest before that, and we could talk about that.
That'd be awesome. That'd be amazing. But yes, I do have to go. This has been really lovely. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for showing us all that great work, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you for saying that.
All right. Well, I put some links in there so you can find Avy there. All right. Bye, Avy. I'll let you go then.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, Avy. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, that was great.
We have real guests.
That was super cool, man.
Yes, she's a proper guest. I'm glad we were able to get her. I saw her. She's like, now she's in the New Yorker, and she's the guest of honor at Zine Fest. So yeah, she's doing some very well there. I met her at which show was? I think it was Alien Con, where I met her first. And she was there of all places. But I guess with her zombie comic, it sort of made some sense.
Wait, she's into aliens and UFOs?
I don't think not especially. I think like a lot of people at Alien Con, like I think she probably would have been at the sort of San Francisco Comic Con before, and they recruited a lot of people for Alien Con there. But I don't know. Well, that next time you can ask her about aliens. Yes.
Yeah, we got to talk about aliens.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to keep it on the arc because she did say she only had an hour to be with us. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How many of us did our homework before the interview?
I read her bio. I wish I had read more. Actually, I barely made it this morning because I've been sleeping way in, and the only thing that saved me was my phone beeping at me. I've been sleeping until like 11 to like the last almost week, and my phone woke me up this morning. I was like, "Oh shit!"
I'm here because of guilt.
What guilt? You didn't make that show?
Because I'm afraid to disappoint Chuck.
Yeah. Good. That's the only motivation I need. Yeah, I don't know. No, you're here because you're a good person, Dale.
No, I'm not.
But yeah, you don't need to worry about disappointing me. I mean, if you guys say, "Well, I can't be bothered with this anymore," I don't know. I mean, I love it. I love coming on talking to you guys. It's fun having some guests on too, that's been nice. We've got Joe Medina is coming on next week again, and I guess I'll leave that one to Chris. What we're going to talk about.
Oh man, I mean, geez, there'll be no shortness of me and Joe. I mean, just our casual conversation could be like a 4-hour Joe Rogan episode. So yeah, there's going to be no shortage of stuff. I'll ask him about what he wants to show. You know, like I'll ask him about if there's anything he wants to talk about, like anything that I mean, I know he's working on an album and he's back in LA. So
I got something I wanted to talk to Dale about. I was watching The Boys last night. Do you watch The Boys?
what is that?
No, I'm superheroed out, but I catch a lot of the clips on YouTube. All I
It's
watch
great.
right now are Columbo episodes, and I've started watching Banachek again. But I have a general idea of who the characters are. Tell me
Yeah,
what's
The Boys is sort of deconstructing the superheroes. I mean, to me, it's by far the best superhero thing that's been done.
They're a bunch of pervs.
They're like the guy who's the main guy, Homelander. You know, he's like Superman, but if Superman was a psychopath, so he's very, very scary. And he's currently, this latest season. I'm only a little way into it, but he sort of realized that he's pretty much untouchable. He sort of freaked out on stage and started telling it like it was. Like I'm sick of pretending not to be powerful. You know, I'm the most powerful. Blah blah blah. Of course, then immediately the Trump parodies, because there's a whole bunch of people are like, oh, that's good. His demographics rising amongst the Midwestern, the Rust Belt white males.
Yeah, and then of course
there's another character, the Deep, who's kind of like Aquaman, but he's also he's more of a sort of sociopath. He's just like a little wishy-washy.
And he has sex with an octopus.
Yes.
What?
So last night he had the episode I saw last night. He had to eat the octopus, and he's friends with the octopus. And he says he's talking to me. He's begging me not to eat him. He's praying while he's eating. And all I can think of was Dale.
Why would you think of me?
Because it seemed like to me another example of sort of trying to, get us used to this idea of cannibalism.
Okay, now I understand it. Yeah, it's true.
Have you heard that? Is that I just came across that the other night? This idea of like, there's all this. We're talking about cannibalism a whole lot right now.
Is Dale?
Are you guys Well, yeah, Dale has been, but I saw something in like a media outlet that was like, hey, there's a lot of stories about cannibalism right now. What's up with that?
It's we're getting ourselves used to the idea. In fact, it was something that was being brought up in the 90s, which is the joke "Eat the Rich."
Yeah, which was a great movie. The comic strip presents movie was Eat the Rich. I don't know if you can find it. I mean, when I did see it recently, it wasn't great quality, but it's
there's an Aerosmith song.
Comic strip present was a series where like a lot of all the young ones kind of came out of that, and that was their group, but they kept doing it for a long time. This guy Peter Richardson was really the sort of main writer behind that. He don't know what he's up to now, but yeah, definitely all the comic strip presents are worth looking at. But the movie Eat the Rich, definitely, that. It sort of holds up, and it doesn't, because it's just like the quality's a little rough. But
the cabal, the Illuminati that work with the Greys that run our world,
are the Greys the aliens?
Get us used to the idea of eating each other, and they've been working on this for decades. So that's why you have movies like Soylent Green. That's why you have all these zombie movies now, where it's people running around eating brains.
How do I raise?
That's why you have the vegan burgers that taste like human flesh. It's all a plan.
Well, you said the Greys, and I think that's the aliens, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the gray aliens. Yeah. Well, interdimensional beings.
Yeah,
they're not.
They're us from the future, is my theory.
Yeah,
they're not too much like us to not be.
They're not on the other side of the moon, right? They're not supposed to.
Oh, yeah, they are. They're on the dark side of the moon.
Oh, they are. Those are the same guys?
In the hollow earth.
In the hollow earth? You mean inside this planet too?
Yes.
So they're on the dark side of the moon, inside this planet, and they're interdimensional?
Yeah.
Man, they're like Renaissance aliens. They do it all.
They're everywhere.
I'm impressed.
And remember,
can we get one of
they're
those
in
on?
conflict with the reptilians.
Oh,
the reptilians are the ones that disguise themselves as the royal family.
Right, I've seen the video footage of that. When the royal family blinks, sometimes you get a second eyelid, a lizard
dictating
eyelid.
Lizard people.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been trying to get us used to that for years. You had the Slee Stack in Land of the Lost. You had the TV show V, where it was the reptilians under the human suits. We've been groomed for this for just decades.
Yeah,
Well,
my feeling
I
is
am
once
used-
it's happened in movies or TV, it might as well have happened in real life. You know, we've all seen it, we've thought about it. You know, it doesn't really matter if it did or it didn't happen. It happened in the movies, so it might as well.
I
have
feel
happened.
bad for Avy because she's going to recommend her friends to see this interview, and those who continue to watch after us talking to her are going to see us jabbering about aliens and cannibalism.
Yes, well,
No,
yes,
dude,
yes.
as soon as she leaves, they're gonna stop watching. That's gonna be the end for them. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, we can save all this for the next show, maybe.
What?
Yeah, I almost forgot that we were still live. And then I looked up in the corner. I was like, okay, we're still live, Chris. Don't totally go off the rails yet.
Well, remember, the motto of our show is "Kids don't eat people."
Yes, don't eat people, and
Kids don't eat people.
dead clowns taste funny.
Who is it? We were speaking of dead clowns. Yeah, that was our guest from last week that was talking about that.
Oh yeah, what's
that
her
killer
name?
that
Yeah,
put
that
the
was
poison
Amber.
in
She's
the
quite keen to
makeup.
come back too, I think. Yeah, she'll come back.
I hope so.
Yeah. So as soon as you said don't eat dead clowns, I was like, why would you? They have poison makeup on. You know, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, certainly not if they died from rice and makeup. Yes, no.
That's right, rice and makeup.
Yes. Again, if anyone's confused about this, watch last week's episode. But last week's episode was at least 3 hours long. So.
Oh my god, that only got rolling after like the first hour. I was like, this is just foreplay. So tune in at about an hour and a half. That's when we really start getting interesting.
Yes. The first hour we had the sort of her husband's sales call going on.
Oh yeah, I was explaining that to someone. I was like, it was like having a third party in the conversation that like didn't stop for anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he's like, he was earning the bread. That's what necessary. If you're an artist, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
I had this with my early Pufel comics. You know, it's very helpful to have a spouse who's out with a proper job.
Oh, I totally get it. I mean, like Cheryl.
Money is useful.
All right. Well, I don't know if we've got anything more to talk about this morning. Yeah. Should we? Yeah. We can talk about future guests we might want to have.
We should probably name drop offline. Rather
Right.
than set expectations.
Yeah, I don't have anyone lined up. If anyone's watching and would like to be a guest, please let us know. We'd love to have you. There's a few people. Like Avy was someone I wanted to have like from the beginning, and so I'm glad I got her on. Also, Amber was too. So yeah, so those were the sort of couple of people. But I don't know. I have. There's lots of people I could approach, definitely. So I guess I will. Reach out.
I can just approach Joe again and again. No, I have some other musician friends. I don't think I have any like artist friends.
I have no friends.
All right.
Well,
I'm going to call the show here. We can talk afterwards for a little bit. But all right, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll
Thanks
see
for watching.
we're
you
going.
next time.